Here we go. Here we go. On the way to the show. Trying to figure out. I feel like I had the hand motions down. Trying to figure out what to do with my lips. Like, what is my dancing face? I've been trying to figure out my dancing face for a few years now.
Love that question of the day. What is my dancing face? When we do
Yes.
interplay performance with
Mhm.
Soulprint players here in Atlanta, our
Yes.
director always says, "Have your face." Because,
Mm.
like, and I know I'm really guilty about that because
Mm.
sometimes I go inward, like I'm
Mhm.
thinking, or like when
Yeah.
I'm dancing as we come on, I'm
Yeah.
often trying to pull down the music. So I have
Right.
my dancing face may have been
No, you look good.
funny today.
You look good. No, I feel like my lips is like, what's going on? What's going on here, right? And that's what we ask sometimes, y'all. Today we were talking about embracing the unknown, and sometimes, hey, is it known? Is it unknown? It's a good question, right?
Ooh, boy, this is timely for me today. I just
Yeah.
have to say,
How are
timely,
you
timely,
doing?
timely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm grumpy. You know that.
Mhm.
We
And
had
I love
lunch
you
for
still. You
breakfast
know that.
together. Thank you, thank you.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I have been grumpy all week, which is a
What's
very
going on?
rare thing for me. Like
Hmm.
it's very interesting to note. So
Hmm.
I'm just allowing myself to have it, right?
Yeah.
Um, and doing things to find joy and doing things to shift like because it's not a place I like to live in, it's not a place I'm comfortable, but
Yeah.
we're talking about change today, which is so timely for me with so much going on in my life, but
Yeah.
I just this week, I mean, of course, state of the world right now has like put me, if you're paying attention at all, I mean, I am just grumpy. And I didn't tell you before I came on, I
Mm.
was in a poetry class and I
Mm.
wrote this poem, which, to me, poems are usually very soothing and it's part of my process. But we were writing about poetry and protest.
Mm.
So I wrote really quickly. This poem came out of me and I
Mm.
ended up reading it. But I don't think I realized how much it affected my nervous system,
Mm.
because it was about what's happening in our country and not having due process and what is happening with people getting taken off the streets. And so when we had our short break, I went out and just sat on the earth. I was like, why are you so dysregulated? Because that's just not my usual state. And I realized, like, y'all, there's big stuff happening right now, like big stuff.
Mm.
And I do this for a living. Like I teach people how to regulate their nervous systems. I teach you, but those of us that are caring for others and doing some of this work, it's we have to be paying attention like to our practices and what brings us back and being grounded. And we had, I think, a
Yes.
15-minute break, or
Mm.
and I literally just went outside and sat on the ground.
Yeah, I went outside too.
And I was thinking, I have this new neighbor
Mm.
that I haven't met yet.
Yeah.
And I didn't go out to the backyard. I went to the front yard. I just went
Okay.
straight out because that's where my irises are blooming and my other
Mm.
flowers. And I just sat on the ground. And I saw her kind of peek out, but I just didn't even have the capacity for that. I wasn't even gonna. I'm like, I'm just sat, and I was
Mm.
like, um, and just remembering, especially with yesterday being Earth Day, how the Earth can hold us
Mhm.
in these times, like, and that change of environment, just to be like, okay, just reset. This
Mhm.
is, yeah, and I just didn't even, because I was wanted to do this poetry class before we
Yeah.
got on, so I
Yeah.
wasn't paying attention to how quick the transition was and how
Okay.
much that, because as a poet and an artist, art really does unlock stuff in us sometimes. And I think I just unlocked something like, and then it
Mhm.
was like, oh wait, we got to talk about this. We got to, and yeah. But
I hear.
thanks for asking. How are you?
Yes. Yes. Of course. Um, Working through the same things in different ways in different places, depending on the project you're talking about. You know me. You know what
Hmm.
I mean. So it's like this year. It's second quarter, right? April 23rd. feel like I finally got my head wrapped around everything that's supposed to be on the table, right? Now we are recalibrating, getting it done, right? Am I getting it done? Is somebody else getting it done?
Mm,
Is it happening now? Is it on pause? Like, where is everything really at? And what does it look like to do everything? We're talking about Shaylo Glow turning 5, and I was talking about a venue for a possible glow day earlier, so that sparked some
mhm.
joy. And
It's
just,
exciting.
yeah, thank you. Um, teasing out the parts that we need to pay attention to, like you said, right? Like you absolutely have to be paying attention to this, whether it's the numbers,
Mhm,
the news, what's going on with
mhm,
family, and then the things that spark joy, as people come back, as you come back from the season that you've been in, and
mhm.
Tino starts to come back from paternity leave. It's like, what are the first few things that we need to do? And what are the
Right.
things that we really want to do, and having the opportunity to work through all of that in business and just remember that that's a beautiful place to be. That's what I've been
Right?
working on.
Right? Yeah. So much goodness, so much not goodness, so
Yeah.
much, so much,
Yeah.
right? I'm so excited to talk to our guest today because I
Mhm.
just feel like she has some tools and things she's bringing to the table that all of us can use. Like
Mhm.
it's should we do our official introduction and kick episode 193 off?
Let's do it. Let's do it. Hey, y'all. I am Shannon Mitchell, a Black millennial entrepreneur, Amazon bestselling publisher, author, and all natural product manufacturer. I am a champion for your natural self care, sustainable business care, and overall intentional wellness.
Hey, y'all. I'm Christine Gautreaux, a white social justice advocate, an international speaker, coach, and best-selling author and publisher, and a dancing social worker who helps you upgrade yourself and community care.
Yes, together we are a podcast rooted in the 8 dimensions of wellness and the co founders of the Women Connected in Wisdom community.
And we like to get together every week with special guests for intentional conversations about how to be wise in business, relationships, and wellness. How do we do this? In an
Environmental
ever
wellness.
changing world, and sometimes really, really rapidly changing.
My goodness. And then it changes back, right? Bell bottoms are back, all this stuff is back, like,
Right?
yeah, it just go back to what it
Mm,
was in a new way. So,
mm,
that's what came up earlier when we were talking to our guests doing the work that we do before the podcast, is something that, one of the elders I used to be around when I was growing up said. He would say, what would he say? The only thing consistent is change, or no, he would say the more things change, the more they stay the same. So it's both. Things are constantly changing, and the only thing that's constant is the fact that things are changing.
my dad used to say the only thing guaranteed is death and taxes.
Mm. Then we're
So,
working on the taxes. The taxes have to be guaranteed.
but it's the
I
same
mean,
thing.
that's
Those
like,
things don't change, right?
no, they
That's gonna
don't. They
happen,
don't.
right?
You
Everything
know?
else changes.
Hey,
So,
and that's why I'm really excited about this conversation, 'cause embracing the unknown, you think you know what's gonna happen, even with the tax
right,
liability, you might think but sometimes combing through the numbers, combing through it is a whole thing, or getting it
right,
organized and being set up ahead is a whole thing. So how to do it is important, and knowing that it's gonna look different in different seasons for different people helps too.
right. That different
Mm.
season thing has really been on my mind
Yeah,
because 5 years ago, because we're 5 years out from the pandemic,
mhm,
from the start of the pandemic,
right,
uh, I thought I was going to be an empty nester because of the
mm,
age of my kids and what was
yeah,
happening, and everybody came home because the world shut down, right?
mhm,
And
mhm,
so it's another possibility in this
yeah,
next month, and that both of my kiddos are going to have their own places and be moving. But it's always so fascinating because one of them has the date, like knows this is the date. I've signed the lease. The other one is waiting on the lease. I don't know a date. I don't know when. It could be. Could is it happening at the exact same time as the other one? Is it
mhm,
happening at a like? I'm
mhm,
telling you, this conversation is so timely today, and also, our dimension of wellness is
mhm,
environmental wellness,
mhm,
which celebrating Earth Day. I know you were working yesterday. Did you do
yes.
anything that gave a little nod to it?
What I've been doing is going under the canopy of these trees that I have.
Mm,
I used to go straight out the door, and there's not too
Mhm.
much grass right outside my door, right? But I feel like I've been going to the trees. I've been thinking about Aminata. Forgive me if I say your name wrong, Dr. Ken. Aminata Soul Plant Firewoman, right?
Mhm.
And her
Mhm.
trees, she's one of our Amazon best-selling authors, and
Mhm.
her chapter in our second volume is about black girl mycelium running and how it's good
Mhm.
to slow down, you know. And so I've
Mhm.
been drinking my coffee, I've been going to work. It's wait a minute, we're supposed to be taking slow mornings and enjoying our time before we go do all that stuff, right? So I've been, hold on, I've been going under the canopy, and I made sure to walk under there yesterday and take some deep breaths and
Mm.
enjoy my coffee outside.
Mm. I love
Mhm.
that.
What about you?
I took an extra long walk in my yard because
Mhm.
sometimes when it's the middle of the week, I don't do that. Like that tends to be, I
Yeah.
mean, I love being in my yard, but see, I did an extra long one yesterday. My amaryllis were blooming from my grandmother. So when my grandmother passed away, one of the things I do is I'm a keeper of the lineage through flowers. And so when my grandmother passed away, I had dug up some flowers from her farm in Texas and brought them to Georgia. Not sure if they would grow because
Right.
different
I remember
climates,
you
you're
said
not
that.
sure. But
Mhm.
these amaryllis every year they have just thrived and they always bloom near
Mhm.
Mother's Day. So they just bloomed yesterday for Earth Day and they will still be
Mhm.
blooming through Mother's Day. And then my purple irises, I have purple irises that I brought when I moved from Texas to Georgia and
Mhm.
moved from the other house to this house, and they're stunning, and they always bloom for Sammy's birthday, which is this weekend. So
Mhm.
I just took an extra special walk, took pictures,
Yeah.
did just really gave gratitude and sat with my trees and just really I was telling somebody allergies in are just merciless this year
Yeah.
in the
A lot
South.
of
And
people are
I
saying
think
that. Yeah.
they're just, we're over the top, but I refuse to not be outside.
Right. It's beautiful.
It is. It is. Well, how about I read this official dimension definition and then we get our guest up here so we can
Yes.
have her be a part of this combo. I
Let's
love
do
it.
it.
All right, y'all. Today we are talking about environmental wellness. Environmental wellness is supporting your good health by occupying pleasant, stimulating environments that enhance your well being. It promotes interaction with nature and also creates enjoyable personal environments both in and out of your workspace. This includes knowing the types of environments you thrive in and having an intentional relationship with these places, including with the earth.
Yes. What stood out for me is the good health, right? Supporting your good health.
Mm-hmm.
And then the knowing the type of environments that you
You
thrive in, right?
thrive
Well,
in.
hold on, it's the good health and then the pleasant and then the thrive. Because what we're going to talk about today with our guests is like you plan stuff, but then something else happens, right? There's a change in
Mhm,
the expectations, a change in
mhm.
what happens, and we might think that's unpleasant, right? But that's it's for your good
And
health
sometimes
though.
it is.
And it is, right? But and then you gotta dissect why and all this stuff, but it might also be for your good health, right? It might be
Mhm,
unpleasant, but it might be for your good health. And so how in those moments do we create that environment that we know is good for us, even if
mhm.
the people in the environment might
Mhm.
not build that for you, right? How do we do that for ourselves? That's where I've been with it, and I'm looking forward to having this conversation about and embracing those types of moments.
Right? And resetting too.
Mhm,
Like when it gets off track or when
mhm.
the environment is not like that, going out and sitting on the ground,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, how do we reset? How do
Mhm.
we do if we're in the middle of a
That's
change
good.
that's uncomfortable or we don't like, how do we
Mhm.
address it? So,
Okay,
all right,
let's have the
you want to read
conversation.
your bio? Let's do it.
Yes, yes, please. Okay, y'all. Lisa DeAngelis is our guest today, and Lisa DeAngelis is a holistic change practitioner, author, teacher, speaker, and a skilled expert in the art of navigating sustainable change. Lisa brings a warm, thoughtful, and creative approach to her work, guiding personal and leadership transformation, and is sought after for her ability to coalesce and communicate information, weaving together ideas in meaningful ways. Lisa's personal goals include a commitment to walking her talk and helping re envision how leaders can navigate change with more authenticity and intentionality to embrace the process of growth while learning to align with guiding principles and core values that support meaningful and impactful choices. Her debut book, Embracing the Unknown Exploring the Pathways to Change, offers research, wisdom, and aspirational stories that empower others in their quest to gracefully navigate change in their own lives. An avid traveler, singer, and lover of the arts, Lisa lives and works in New York City. Help us welcome to the stage Lisa. Hi, Lisa.
Welcome, Lisa.
Hello, hello. It's so great to be with you both today. And I was sitting backstage listening to your Earth Day stories. This just
Yeah.
feels so nice to be here. I was actually at a cacao ceremony sound bath yesterday
Ooh,
evening.
I was going to ask
Oh,
you.
Yum.
so lovely. So
Nice.
deep connection to the earth through that plant life and really
Mhm.
finding space to center around this idea of reciprocity, right? The give and take.
Mhm.
And this
Mhm.
really core sense of our connection to something bigger than ourselves.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. It's been a minute since I've been at a cacao ceremony. Thank you for that reminder. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating because we do forget how much we have
Mhm.
at our disposal because we
Mhm.
get into our habits, we get into our flow, and sometimes that can be a really great and productive thing when we're when we're in the flow, when we're in a
Right.
zone. But when
Mhm.
we get a little jostled off track in one way or another, it can be easy to just forget how much is right on the periphery. And so
Mhm.
that's one of the things I love reminding people is how many more tools and skills and resources they have than they think.
Mhm.
We've just got to take a step back and remind ourselves. We're not good at doing the self-celebration
Mhm.
game of, oh, wait,
Mhm.
I'm actually a really good this. Oh, actually,
Right?
I've
Mhm.
always been able to do this. And so I think
Mhm.
that's a great bouncing off point to start here is to say, just pausing to look around and say, what actually do I have available to me right now that I can just
Mhm.
very easily and quickly pull in and just say, oh, you know what? This is the perfect thing to just help me in this exact moment. Huh, look at that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Mm. I love that. Lisa.
So
Oh, go, Shannon.
how do you do that, Lisa? There's a situation, right? You thought X was gonna happen. Y
Yeah.
shows up. How do you go from why is Y here to, oh, let me pull this tool, right? What do you do?
That's such an interesting question, and it has changed so much for me over
Mhm.
the last few years as I've been on my own somatic trauma healing journey.
Mhm.
But really, what I've realized is what I used to do was spend a
Mhm.
ton of time on the first reaction, which was, "Why is this happening? What's
Mhm.
going on here?"
Mm.
And if I get caught in that loop, if I get really, really stuck trying to dissect or trying to say, "Wait, I shouldn't be sad. This shouldn't be throwing me off. I should be doing this," but any of those shoulds, one of my favorite little, things is, stop shitting all over yourself,
We
right?
do
It's
it too. We
really
talk about it. It's a thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, don't shit all over yourself too much.
No.
So, but this idea when we can push out the shoulds, all of a sudden there is space.
Mhm.
There
Mhm.
is space. There's mental space. There's physical space. Christine, you were talking about being dysregulated before. When we're
Mhm.
dysregulated, there's not space. But
Right?
when we immediately come back to a situation where we can create a little space, all of a sudden, it's like you're in a dark room and your eyes adjust. And you go,
Right?
oh, I actually can see where I am. I can see
Mhm.
what's around me. So
Mhm.
Shannon, that's what I would say is I've realized that I actually need to acknowledge what's coming up, right?
Mhm.
This
Mhm.
whatever it is, if it's a negative feeling, if it's a freak out, if it's a difficulty, if it's fear, if it's scarcity of some sort, really acknowledge it and just not try to make it not be there, but just say, okay, I see you. And now let my eyes adjust and let's see what else is here. That's
Mhm.
the kind of space that is really, really valuable because it's not work that we have to do. It exists. Like I said, we
Right?
forget it's already there. It's not like you have to go out and take a class to figure out how to deal with whatever situation you're in. We
Right.
all have those tools and resources
Mhm.
readily at our fingertips. We just forget.
Yes.
Right? I love the naming it piece, right? I feel really lucky that I have a lot of good people in my life. I had a situation earlier this week was not what I expected, and I was really grumpy about it. And I had to call somebody and just say, I need to name how unfair this is and how frustrating it is.
Mhm.
And they just held space and they were like, yep. And then I could let most of it go. I'm still a little grumpy about it because, like, mm, it has to do with health insurance and
Oh,
the cost of our health care in
say
this
no more.
country, right?
Right.
And showing up for an appointment and then being like, hey, this is going to be $500 every time you come in until you meet your
Mm.
deductible.
Mhm.
And just, I am privileged enough that I can adapt and figure that out. But I'm also a social worker at heart. So anytime something like that happens, I think about myself and my family, but I also think about the greater my community and just, it gets me like, and so sometimes I just have to name it. Like, this is not a just system. And so I love that, Lisa, that you say naming it, because then it does create space for me to figure out, like, okay, then what are the next steps? What's my role in changing it if it needs to be changed?
Absolutely. And I have a lot of people that will ask me, well, what's holistic change? Like, how is that different
Mm-hmm.
from change? Isn't all change a whole thing? Isn't it? But really this
Great
concept,
question.
yeah, this concept of what is holistic change is it's sort of taking change as a transactional interaction
Mm-hmm.
and making it tractional. It's putting it into
Mm.
a bigger context and considering the larger interconnectedness. When I
Mm-hmm.
make a change, it doesn't just affect me. I don't exist in
Sure.
a vacuum. Sometimes we're fortunate enough to make changes that truly impact others on really, really great levels and on great scales. But we do often, I think, need to be reminded that even a small change in my little world affects people around me. And
Mm-hmm.
those ripples are how greater social change are created in the
Mm-hmm.
environment. I learned something fascinating during COVID, that a precursor to change is a change in language.
Mm.
Hear people in a community start to adopt different language, different kind of semantical, actual
Mm-hmm.
words in the lexicon. That is an indicator that the change is infiltrating at a different level. And it's actually usually the first way. And think about it. Before the pandemic, the kind of words we use now, we weren't using them.
Like what? What's a new word?
Well, even just talking about what it means. Well, okay, so the word ally existed, let's say,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
before there, but I think in a very, very different context.
Mm-hmm.
Allyship means something very, very different now,
Mm-hmm.
right? The idea of us talking about being awake is more than
Mm-hmm.
just waking up from sleeping, right?
Mhm.
Our cognizance in the world has
Mhm.
shifted. And
Mhm.
even when we were talking here, we're talking about, holding space, having capacity.
Mhm.
These
Mm-hmm.
were not words that we were using 5,
Mm-hmm.
6 years ago. These are
Mhm.
these are terms that we have adopted because we recognize there is a need to name them. And I think
Mhm.
that's what comes back to what you're saying, Christine, is we are actually then culturally responding. That's change. So I
Mm-hmm.
start saying those words just to my friends, and that
Right.
helps further the larger change because it all builds out in branches.
Well, and I know that you are a lover of the arts. And as an artist myself, and I know you're a singer, I would also say that that's why artists are so crucial, because often art comes even before the language, or the
Mhm.
language comes out through performance or TV or like movies. Like, so I think that piece is interwoven and interconnected in our environment. And sometimes we're aware of it and sometimes we're not, right? I remember a book, and I think I've mentioned it on the podcast before. It was when I was in Dr. Brene Brown's class in grad school, and she introduced us to the book Can't Buy Me Love. And I always forget, I have to look up the name of the author because I always misquote her. I'll look it up in just a second. But it was really talking about the advertising world in the United States and how it's the language, it's what's presented to, so I'm always looking at it from both sides, right? It's like, let's pay attention to how things are labeled or said or what is done, both in the positive and the negative, because I think it makes a difference.
And I
Yeah.
refer to change as the ultimate creative process. So I love that you said
Mm.
that, because I think
Mm.
that's really kind of what we're getting to here. Shannon, sorry, I didn't mean
Mm.
to.
No, you're fine. I was tagging along with you ladies. Can you talk more about that? So you talk about the ultimate creative process and it being tractional instead of transactional. Can
Mhm,
you go deeper there?
mhm. I would say, and I feel like I can say this with a reasonable amount of confidence, because I am an artist and I
Right.
have created. Um, I would say that 99.9999999% of the time, the product is not what you started out intending
Right.
it. I
Right.
would say 100%, but there's always that 0.000.
Right.
We never want to talk in absolutes and cut anybody out.
Right.
People
You
have
know?
such a vision that they can just really create exactly what they want. But see,
Mm.
a crucial part of the creative process is actually that push-pull, that decision making of
Mhm.
what stays and what goes, what helps me move this forward, what wants to be birthed out of this moment, because that's really what we're do is it's a generative process of co-creation, and it happens in
Mhm.
cycles. We get a burst and we add something, and then we have to step back and say, how does that work? I interviewed an artist for my book. She
Mhm.
actually painted this piece behind me,
Oh,
which
Ooh,
I
beautiful.
really, really love.
beautiful.
But I
Mm.
was talking to her about this, and she
Mm.
was talking about how most often when she's working with newer artists, this is the hardest part for them, is letting go of their original idea of what the piece was
Yeah.
going to become.
Mhm.
And if we apply that to ourselves, what
Mhm.
happens if we take a step back and let go of who we decided when we were a different person that we
Right.
were going to become, and let ourselves step
Mm.
into who we already are?
Mhm.
And I
Mm.
think that's really what I mean about change being the ultimate creative process, because it is something that's iterative. It is something that we are an active part of if we allow it to be. Change is not just something that comes and bangs us on the side of the head. It can
Mhm.
feel like that
Right.
sometimes. And those are the moments when we really need to have compassion for ourselves and give ourselves the space to feel our feelings around it. But the reality is, it is a product of what we then bring to the table, how we
Mhm.
respond to
Mhm.
it. And we have that choice. We always have a choice.
Mm. And when you're saying we have a choice in allowing it to come to fruition the way that it wants to and not necessarily the way that we initially thought of it.
Oh, we can fight tooth and nail. I'm sure everyone has encountered a situation where we really didn't want to change in the direction that life was pushing or pulling us, right? We can
Mhm.
fight and we can really say, I want to move it here. I want it to go there. But the reality of the situation is I think it's important to ask ourselves, what are we actually fighting?
Mhm.
Are we fighting the unknown? Are we fighting the fact that we just aren't sure what that looks like? And that is not exactly familiar. So guess what? Our system reads that as a threat.
Mhm.
Anything that is not familiar throws us back into our limbic survival brain and says, whoop, this could be something really, really dangerous here. Stay with what's safe. Stay with
Mhm.
what's comfortable.
Mhm.
So it takes courage to
Mhm.
move out of that place of comfort and familiarity, and that is a learned process. That's a skill that we can hone and develop.
Mm. So, and that's what I wanted to talk about next, right? In embracing the unknown, you talked about how important. Well, actually, I haven't finished reading it, so I don't know if you talked about it in the book, but we were talking before the show, right, about the embracing in the title being so important. How
Yes.
do you embrace after you take a deep breath, right, and you take yourself out of fight or flight, and you're like, "This is not a threat. It's a new situation. I'm doing things for the first time," and embrace the unknown in different moments?
Hmm. I'm going to answer your question a little circuitously.
Okay.
When I first started writing the book, I sort of thought to myself, I am going to write the quintessential book on change and, how to change in 5 easy steps, right?
Yeah, right.
Ha ha.
Right, right. You had a little bit of unknown and change in there, huh? Yeah.
Oh yeah, they say that the book you write is probably the book you most need to read. So here we are. That should tell you something
Mm.
about me. But really what happened was an interesting kind of combination of, I really wanted to create tangible, actionable takeaways for people. But I couldn't ignore the fact that this is a process of embracing something way bigger than one specific change.
Right.
And so that really is that kind of medium point for me, that sort of balance that I tried to strike. Is there are a lot of places, for example, I have a whole chapter on the concept of stretch, right? Which is this idea of we all have a comfort zone. That's where our safety lives. And we all have a panic zone, right? And we know when we're in panic, that's, Christine, dysregulation. That's just totally going into a response where we've kind of lost the ability to make higher decisions in those moments because our body and our system is concerned with getting us back to a place where we are more regulated and feel safer, frankly. But we forget that there is a stretch zone in between that comfort zone and that panic zone. And the stretch is actually where change happens and where learning happens. We can't learn when we're in our panic mode. When we've gone too far and the rubber band snaps back, we have to get back to a point where we can start stretching again. And what's interesting is the stretch zone is not fixed. It's exactly what the word sounds like. It's a skill. We need to map it out. We actually need to boundary out. How big is my stretch zone? It might be this, it might start out this narrow, but over time we can expand it if we know where the edges are. But if we don't know where our edges are, all of a sudden we're just going to find ourselves in panic. And then we're going to be thrown back into comfort and safety. And we're never going to really be able to have that fluidity. So that's, for example, Shannon, a really active way. When we pause, we can say, okay, hold please. Where am I? Am I still stuck in my comfort zone right now? Am I in a safe, comfortable, familiar place? Am I panicked? And if I'm panicked, like, let's just work on getting ourselves a little bit more regulated again, right?
Yeah, right,
And then let's get into that stretch space. And so that's a little bit of my approach to the whole process, because I believe that it is really important for us to identify the barriers to changing, first and foremost, so that they're not hitting us upside the head, right? They're not surprising us. We know what our barriers and our struggles might be, so that when we confront them, we can say, oh yeah, this is just a hurdle. I know how to jump a hurdle.
right. So when you're working with different people, like, what are some of the main challenges that you find outside of fear? Let's say like fear, self-doubt, like you said, that you absolutely can do it. It might be something that is new to you, right? What are other things that people think about all the time that they might not realize are really big hurdles that could be not so big if they looked at them face on?
Totally. Well, you brought up something when we were talking earlier that I think it's a good moment to bring it back. And I'm going to bring it up as the concept of pivot. Okay.
Yes,
People
yes.
forget that pivoting is an option for choice in the way we move forward. And often I think I experience most people getting stuck in a rut. And whether it's a rut because they're actually like deep in mud and they can't move at all, or it's the rut of I'm in this lane and I can't seem to change lanes because it feels too busy on either side of me. Or it's sort of this idea that I don't know how to go forward or where to move. We forget that we've got all of these different directions we can theoretically go. And I always joke with people about, what if you're sitting on a swivel seat and you can just kind of scoot yourself around and see what's there? That really can help a lot of people just kick out of their perspective of thinking blinders are on. This is the only direction I can go right now, because most of the time that's not actually true.
Right.
It's just the habit. It's to say, I can only focus on what's in front of me here. So a lot of my work is just kind of helping people take steps back, literally and figuratively. I'm really good at turning things kind of upside down and on their heads and just say, well, is that really how it is? Or is that just what we're used to seeing? And that can be really helpful for getting people to get out of their own mental habits. And that can be anything from negativity bias. I mean, we have to acknowledge that a lot of these things biologically are really wired into our system. We're wired to focus on the negative things because they're threatening. We have to make effort to find the joy. We don't have to make the effort to discover joy. Joy is there, but into our system to notice it, to enjoy the joy.
Mhm.
That's the work. That's really the work, because it's all there. It's all there for us. We sort of think like, I have to go out and create this experience. Joy exists if we are willing to see it and allow it in. And I think that's the cool part about it, because when we let joy, when we let excitement creep in, that's when we get to the really rich stuff. Gay Hendricks, in his book The Big Leap, talks about the difference between fear and excitement, and it's breath.
Mhm.
One is holding your breath, and one is sort of the anticipation of
Mhm.
release, right? And the fear is the constriction. The excitement is the same feeling, but there's some energy behind it. And so that's a really cool thing, I think, to recognize too, is that these things always work in pairs.
Yes. And what you were saying earlier reminded me about one of our authors, Eileen Dillon, talks about how to master anger. And she actually talks about mastering emotions, things like that, right? And in her history, she's been doing this for 51, maybe 52 years now. She's in her 80s.
Mm.
When she started, she was struggling finding research on anger, right? So you shared with us, you're working on this book. Where is all the research on what did you say was a category that you were looking up?
Personal change. Yeah, personal
Personal
change.
Mhm.
change. Just
Because
crazy. Tell us
like
more about
organizational change, it's
Mhm.
all over the place. You can go
Mm.
research how to change your organization, how to
Yeah.
optimize this, how to maximize that,
Mhm.
that is all over the place.
Mhm.
But I had to say to myself, okay, first of all, what can we draw from that? There are things we can draw from that. It's
Absolutely.
that I'm
Mhm.
not a manager or an employee. I'm all of them, right? I'm the
Right,
manager
right.
doing, I'm the employee working. I'm actually the
Exactly.
organization running itself too. So
Mhm.
you have to
Mhm.
apply it differently. But then
Mhm.
there's also this theory that I just have discovered, is that the reason that it's so easy to research is because it's its own little ecosystem.
Mhm.
Mm.
Right? Like you can put it into a little context and say, okay, we've got this company and we've got the people who work there and we've got this. How do we put ourselves into an ecosystem? How do we research that?
Mhm.
Everybody's experience is so different and constantly evolving. I love that Heraclitus quote you brought up at the beginning: change is the only constant, right? He's a Greek
Mm.
philosopher.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
some people are less familiar with another one of his quotes, which I absolutely
Mhm.
love. It was at the
Oh,
beginning
tell
of
us.
my book I put in there,
Yes.
is that
Okay.
I wish I could change it, but I will do it as it's quoted. It's no man steps into the same river twice,
How about
because
we
it's not
talked
the
about
same
it?
river and he's not the same man. So
Mhm.
let's update that and just say no person, right? Because
Right, right.
Mhm.
I wanted to change it, but I will do
Yes.
let's justice first, and then we will adapt. And
Yes.
let's say we have to recognize that. Think of it like a rushing river, right? Every moment that river is different, and every moment I walk up to it, I'm a different person. Something happened. I heard something. I thought something. It changes me constantly. And when we remember that, we're just kind of constantly flowing, evolving things. We're in some ways no different than the trees.
Yes.
Breathe
Yes.
in the
You
wind.
know what I mean? And I was looking at when I was under the canopy yesterday, like, look at how far out this canopy
Mm,
stretches. I
mm.
was like, wow. And I was looking at all the leaves and thinking about our impact, Christine, and all the downloads and all the lives and all the things. And we did read that part actually, Lisa, because we've been talking about your book for a while. I've been reading it. And we talked about the same thing, how in different situations, yes, I'm Shannon. I love Shannon, but me today is different than me 6 years ago when my mom was first
Yeah.
passing away. The
Yeah.
social capacity is different. Me now is a different person than I was when I first started the business, and I look forward to and the businesses. I look forward to the difference in another 5 years. So what unknown I'll be facing and how to embrace it, that might need a different tool at that level. So it makes perfect sense.
Of course. And we can approach that process with judgment or with
Mhm.
curiosity.
Yeah.
That is a choice we have. And
Mhm.
I think the way you just said it is, who will I be? That's the curious question.
Mhm.
It's, if I don't achieve this by then
Mhm.
that's what gets us into these spaces that are
Shoulds.
really challenging. That's the should
Yeah.
space, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
But that for me is a real practice of leaning in to curiosity, and
Mhm.
that
Mm.
creates a situation by which we are constantly willing to learn. And that doesn't mean we're going to school, right? But everyone, it's that idea that everyone we meet has something to teach us.
Mhm.
And it could just be that, we need a reminder, but that's a learning too.
That makes me think the way you said that, Lisa. Do y'all follow, I think her tag on Instagram is the Badass Quilter. Do y'all know her? She's a creative.
No.
She's awesome.
What type
So
of quilt?
what
Okay.
she was talking about this morning was, who do you want to be
Yeah.
when all this is over? Like,
Yeah.
it really resonated with me, especially for those of us that are, we're in the work, we're in the social change movement, and some of this stuff is going to take years to undo, and we don't want to wait years to be who we are, right? And just like you were saying, Lisa, I think it connects to the languaging and to the, like, who do we want to be in this moment, and that wonder and curiosity, and that we do have capacity to be those people if we approach it with joy and connection. And I think that's powerful. Right?
Absolutely. And that's sort of why we can't reduce this process, what it means to change, into a checklist. Because I really realize that it's not about a formula, it's not about a prescription, it's not about finding 5 steps. It's about really discovering what the resources and the guiding principles are for what it means to change, what sustainable change actually looks like, which is constant availability to both input and output, right? Where we're never closed off in one direction or the other. Because how can we imagine what we haven't yet experienced? This is the quintessential question here, is I could tell you who I want to be in the future, but I haven't experienced things I have yet. I don't even know what's possible. If I'm deciding now what's happening, I am cutting myself off from amazing possibilities. And Christine, when you talk about the change we want to see in our world, it also requires us to ask ourselves, who do we want to be in this world? What do we want to ask for? What do we want to move toward? What do we want to create as a part of the process? But also, the people who always just say, well, we should just not do that anymore. That's one of the most dangerous ways to approach habit change and life change, is because if we just cut things off without any thought, we really, really risk throwing ourselves into panic zone. So I would also love to see so many of the issues and systems and situations that we deal with that are not optimal for our world. I would love to see them just disappear tomorrow. And I know that would throw us into a tailspin. All of us collectively. So what I think it is important for us to recognize is coming back to these ideas of what are my values, what is the guiding system for me as I move forward, is such it's a crucial question.
Right. Okay. Total left turn, but I have to tell you all about this because I love resources. And I was hanging out with my friend Shelly, who's an incredible therapist, and not mine because we're friends. But she introduced me to this deck of cards that I think you would love, Lisa. And it's a deck on values. And it's got really cool artwork. I'm going to pull it up. Hang on. I have it downstairs, but I'm going to pull it up so I can quote the name of it to y'all. Cool. It was so fun. And what it does is it's this deck of cards. And what you do is you say what's truly important to me, what's pretty important to me, and what's not important to me at all. And then you go through and you really kind of ask yourself those questions, and you explore it, and it's just a fun tool that is let's see, the Live Your Values deck by Lisa Congdon and Andrea Niculescu. I probably butchered her last name, but I'll put a link in our show notes, because it's just what you're talking about. And it's another fun way to interact with, who am I? Who do I want to be? How do I want to approach this change?
I love that. And I encourage a lot of people, I've done one for myself, is, develop your own personal mission statement, develop your own sense of a value, really laying it out, thinking about it, and the roles you carry in your life and in your world. These are really important things. But for me, when it comes down to change, my inquiry was really around this question of what are some of the values that help support sustainable change, which means we're in the process of and open, available to change in a cyclical way throughout our lives, right? Like we're rolling. We're just keeping on down. And for me, the concept of align came up, the word align, right? And that represents authenticity, learning, intentionality, gratitude, and nurturing. And for me, those 5 values really help support this concept of sustainable change, because continuously coming back to authenticity, continuing to say to myself, what is honest? What is what reflects where I am right now? And I was actually very careful about what I just said right then, because authenticity has become a bit of a buzzword. And it's a little misused sometimes, speaking of how language kind of gets flipped around. And I think it has a little bit of a shadow side if we're not careful, just sort of say, well, I'm just being authentic, and that's why I was cruel, or that's why I was. True authenticity incorporates a sense of honesty. And when I talk about it in my book, it comes a little bit from my own work with horses, with equine partners, because what's important to them is congruence.
Okay.
They don't care what you're showing up with. They don't care if you're scared. They don't care if you're angry. They don't care. What they do care about is if you're pretending not to be, because they can't trust that what they're picking up is not what you are allowing. And so this idea of authenticity as congruence, I think, is a really, really important one for me in my definition of what that means, because it is a radical honesty with ourselves and in relationship with another. And that is an important aspect for change, because we do have to be honest with ourselves. It's not about saying, I am being authentically this, or I am being authentically that. It's truly a sense of authentic to me in this moment is honoring all of the pieces of what I'm showing up with, whatever that is. And I could be scared out of my mind. But if I'm showing up knowing that, I'm actually going to go further than somebody who is hiding it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Yes. So every week, Lisa, we talk about something that we're doing intentionally for ourselves, right? We help a lot of people. You have clients, you have readers, you have people who read your ebook and go to your different resources that you have. But we love to share what we're doing for ourselves. So for your environmental wellness, what are you focused on this week?
This was a year for me that my goal was to have no goals. And doesn't mean I have a year where nothing happens, right? I mean, but to allow myself to move in a way that is not so driven by achievement. And so this week I have been really, really proud of myself for consistently checking in and asking myself when this stuff comes in, and just saying sort of, is this actually what is going to serve me best right now? And sometimes I get a very reluctant, you need to, you just need to do it. But there are other moments when I kind of get the response, you know what? No. Not the right thing right now. And then I can decide and come back to it. And I used to have a much more difficult time saying no to people, deciding whether I was going to go to that dinner or see that person. And now it feels very different. And that has spurred off of this year of having no goals, but still honoring the moving forward in life. Just because I don't have named, actionable, result-oriented things on a list doesn't mean I'm not constantly moving forward. So I don't know how to name that in a
what I snagged from that, Lisa, what you said is check in. Because you're checking in with yourself. In interplay, the modality I use is, we call that noticing.
Yes.
Like we're checking in with ourselves and we're noticing our body data and wisdom and knowledge. And what is this body needing in this moment, right?
Yes.
And so I love that you're doing that practice. That's beautiful. What about you, Shannon? What's your wisdom in action this week?
I said leaning into the curiosity. You
Mm.
know, we've been talking
Mm.
about noticing instead of judging. It's been really good, right? And you'll get there and you're like, I'm curious. I'm curious. And then somebody might say something and you're like, I'm upset. You know what I mean? So staying in the curiosity, like moving back to the curiosity after I recenter, after I check in, remembering, just like you were saying earlier, Lisa, you can learn from anybody, right? Every day is a new day. So really trying to show up and do my best for that day has been what I've been focused on. And when I come in, to work, to a project, to a Zoom, wherever we are, remembering to bring my curiosity, I think will keep the fun energy, you know what I mean, as we continue to build systems and build teams. What about for you, Christine?
Well, I did when I was writing down Lisa's check-in. I wrote down hashtag notice because that's always
Mhm,
one of my practices. And
mhm.
then my other one was ground because it
Mhm.
was really so important for me today to be on the ground.
Yeah,
And I know like right now there's a lot swirling and I need to be grounded. So just that practice every day of grounding myself with my practices,
yeah,
which so many include nature, which is perfect for environmental wellness. But yeah,
yeah,
so
I hear you.
and just
Yes.
practically not looking at the news first.
No,
That's
really.
the
Yeah,
other.
not first. Not first.
Pacing, right?
Right,
And I
Casey.
think that is actually a really important thing to look at all of the examples of, when we're already on the other side of something, it's really easy to forget what it took to get there.
Right.
And the important reminder that nature gives us sort of constant
Mhm,
opportunities to look at these things.
mhm,
I love using nature as examples. And when it
Mhm,
comes to change, it's sort of like snakes shed their skin at really regular intervals, but most people don't realize that there is a moment when the new skin is forming before the old skin has left, that they go completely
mhm.
blind.
Yep.
mhm.
And
I forgot about that.
yeah, we forget
Oh.
that there is a moment where they're blind. And hermit crabs, when they change their shells, they
Mhm,
have to leave the old shell and go to the new shell. They're
mm,
completely exposed. That it
mm,
is the moment where they are the most vulnerable. And butterflies, when they are going through the process of, creating from caterpillar, when they're in their chrysalis, there is a moment where if you break open that cocoon, you will have nothing but goo. And
mhm.
that
Mhm.
is it.
And they won't be able to fly.
They
Right,
will, well,
Right.
they won't even
Yeah.
be able to
They won't
right.
live.
get
Yeah.
together. But
Mhm,
I just love, because it sort of feels so well placed. Whoever designed this, right? They're called
Mhm,
imaginal cells, the cells
mhm,
mhm,
that retain
mhm,
from caterpillar to butterfly, right? Like
mm,
imagining what's going to be possible on the other side that exists already. But
mhm,
we have to just let the process of breakdown happen before we move
mhm,
forward. So I do think it's really important to remind ourselves in any moment that we always need to put it into a bigger context of, where am I in my cycle? Where am I? And I don't mean that as a feminine cycle.
mhm,
I'm
mhm,
talking about greater cycles of shift, of
mhm,
mhm,
change, of growth and transformation and evolution, because that's
mhm.
really what this is about. And do I need to adjust anything in my environment to
Right.
allow
mhm,
myself to bloom greater? I mean, I've got some plants on my windowsill, and there are moments, different points of the year, when I need to just shift something around so they just get a little more sun. Like, how can we give
Yeah.
ourselves a little more sun at the windowsill?
mhm,
And whether it's getting on the ground and grounding, or, going out and looking at our trees, like, drinking the coffee under the canopy.
mhm,
It's a really important question to ask ourselves, is what those are the things in our control, is what can we shift in our own environment to support where we are now, and
Mm,
also where we want to go.
mhm.
right. And I
Yeah.
would also just add being gentle with ourselves.
Mhm,
Like
Mhm.
if we're in the because when you said that about snakes, I absolutely knew that because my dad was a life science teacher, and one
Amazing.
time I had a 6'2" boa constrictor strike at me
mhm,
because they were in that process and I didn't know they were blind and they were scared. And
mm,
Mm,
I was fine, scared the heck out of me. I was a
mhm,
kid, but also that it's normal to be scared if you
mhm,
can't see or you don't know what's coming next or you're and so that having compassion for ourselves and having a coach or having somebody that can hold our hands through it or be with it. So Lisa, before we say goodbye, how can folks
mm.
reach you? If they want to connect with you, if they we're going to put it all in our show notes, but give them a shout out if they're
Well,
listening.
That would be great. I have to admit that I made the choice to get off some of my social medias earlier this year because it was not serving my mental physical wellness like might have hoped. So LinkedIn is the best place to connect with me in a sort of a social platform. But my website, just my name, www.lisadeangelis.com. You can find information about me, my book. Christine and Shannon, I would love to give your listeners a promo code for a 99-cent ebook on my website. If
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
we'll set that up and we can put that in the show notes. We'll do like wisdom or something like that, and
Oh, I love that.
put that in, and that would be great because I would just love to. I love just working with people in these spaces and having these important conversations, and frankly, hearing people's stories because I think this is really what it's about. Is we learn so much when we connect with each other, when we remember we're part of a much deeper web in this world that we are
So
equally
true.
creating and leaning into and falling into and enjoying. Right? It's all a part of what we're doing here.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much, Lisa. It's so great to be connected to you. And we're just so grateful for your work in the world. The world
Yes.
needs more of you and what you're doing out there. So thank you so much for being a guest today. And I hope we stay connected.
Yes.
Likewise, your bright lights, and yes, the world needs more voices that are willing to speak on what's true for us. So thank
Right.
you, truly,
Thank
thank
you so
you.
much. Absolutely.
Oh, so
Mm.
good. So good.
Discovering your relationship to change, so important, so you can look at
Mhm.
it. Where am I right now? Who do I want to be? And I love what she said about allowing space for it to be different. Like you think you know the version of you. Okay, think about it. I know that's important to vision. We have the Connected
Mhm.
and Vision party every year,
Mhm.
but then allow space for what is.
Mm. Yep.
Mm,
Boy, I know that to be true
yeah.
in
You were
my
talking about
lifetime.
quilts. It reminds me of my crocheting. And when I started crocheting, it's been like, how many years is it now? I'm going to be 32 next month, right? So I guess it's been like 28 years, 27 years crocheting. And y'all, those rows be crooked sometimes, okay? The stitch is not always straight. But guess what? The blanket is still warm, okay? And now after all these decades, the stitches are straight. And it's like, does it even look like my blanket? Now it looks like somebody, it looks like a more experienced, it is my blanket, right? So it's a more experienced crocheter, but now I kind of miss the crooked rows. So that's what I was thinking about, enjoying the cricket rows, enjoying the straight rows, and being gentle with yourself that you're still getting there.
Right? Such
Yeah.
good stuff. Such
Yeah,
good
it
wisdom.
is.
Anything
Okay.
else our listeners need to know before we wrap episode 193?
Yes, and I knew you were gonna ask that. I was just thinking about y'all. And we've said it before, right? We will say it again. And this is supposed to be, and we'll see what happens, right? This is supposed
Mhm.
to be officially the last time we talk about the open doors. Y'all, we are writing volume 3. Right now
Mhm.
it is
Mhm.
April 2025. So if you're listening to this in a completely different time, let us know. Put it in the comments if it's 2038 and you're listening and you're like, are you guys still writing books? Right? Let us know. But we have still another week, right? The doors are
Mhm.
open. We would love for you
Mhm.
to join us. We have, such a good time uplifting resources and stories like Lisa's. We have other stories and resources that we've shared in 2 volumes. The first one had 18, the second one had 12. We would love to see 24 of us in this volume uplifting the different things that we've gone through and how we help our clients. If it's not you and you know somebody who's really helped you have a cousin, an auntie,
Mhm.
a mother, a daughter who you think would be a great fit, let us know. And this is the updated part, okay, y'all? Reach out to us at cwpress at womenconnectedinwisdom.com. This is through Connected in Wisdom Press, so we're going through that email to make sure everything is organized. And we actually have a call tonight. So if you are with us live, we know we have some viewers, we have some listeners. If you guys want to join us, we do have our community meeting at 6:30 tonight. So that's Eastern Standard Time. So join us. And we're also wrapping season 23. So thank you so much for joining us for 193 episodes of Intentional Dimensional Wellness. We'll be live next week at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the wrap of season 23 and talking about Lisa, our other amazing guests that we've had. In the meantime, be well, be wise, be whole. We'll talk to you soon.